By the rivers of Babylon, yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying.
Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome to another Tanakh review. My name is Zurishaddai, one of the teachers of Congregation BINAH CHOKMAH, located in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York. Our address is 382 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, 11231. Giving all honor, glory, and praise to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the one and true and only living God, the Most High, who has allowed us all to be here and has allowed us all to gain this knowledge and this understanding. So I pray that the Most High God be with you all the listeners, those of you who continuously listen to this study and come back every week. We're sorry about last week that we didn't have a stream, but it was a couple of things that happened, got crossed up, and we didn't get to complete that last week. So this week we'll be going over Psalms 107, and I'll pass the mic on over to one of my teachers, even one of my mentors, even Nasik Zurishaddai ben Yehudah. How are you, Nasik?
Great, Baruch Hashem. First of all, I'd like to say, Adonai, Stephtadi, Takofia, Gichi, Ateka, Olo, Umadama, listen, Master, praise, giving honor to the God of my forefathers, the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, to respect to the leadership of D.C.B and the platform on, Chief Prince Ariel being Saskar, the host Chief Uzael, to the Prince, Chiefs, Rabbinate, Kohanim, Maureen, brothers and sisters, visitors to the particular podcast. I greet you in the tongue of my forefathers, Shalom Aleichem, and the early Shabbat Shalom. We're good thing we're slightly behind on what we had planned on doing, so I will try to be a little bit brief in this year and condense quite a bit within a brief moment. But we'll be covering a portion of Psalm 107, and that will coincide with the portion that would normally be with the portion they call Zah, which means command. Zah, most people say Zav, so, they pronounce with the V at the end, Zah. But it means a command. And that'd be covering from Leviticus, the 6th chapter, 1st verse, going to Leviticus, the 8th chapter, 36th verse. We also, the normal Haftorah that goes along with that, which is very interesting Haftorah. It's come from the book of Jeremiah, sometimes referred to as the weeping prophet, and the real first designated international prophet with a riddle for life and destiny for life was already defined for him. And the Haftorah that would normally go along with that would be Jeremiah 7th chapter, 21st verse, and goes to Jeremiah 8th chapter, 3rd verse, and then it skips over to the 9th chapter, the 23rd and the 22nd and 23rd verse, which I will just cover those three verses, 2 verses there when we get to the 9th chapter of Jeremiah. Since that particular Sidra Zah coincided with what we call Shabbat Hagadol, which means the Great Shabbat, and they had different. Those that follow a traditional view, they did a different Haftorah that particular week, and also a couple of different readings for the Haftorah, but they had a different Haftorah section, which is Malachi, the 3rd chapter of Malachi, and it goes on to the in most books, they say 4 and 24. Now that's, and I'm gonna touch on that a bit, because when we look at the book of Malachi, and when they say it goes from the 3rd chapter, 4th verse to the 24th verse, most people that will look at the Haftorah in their particular Bibles, the majority of people that might have a regular King James Version Bible instead of a Tanakh as we use, they will have 4 chapters in the book of Malachi. And so they would have, in the 4th chapter, it'd be going from the 4th chapter, begin with the 1st verse, of course, and it goes to the 6th verse, where the 3rd chapter ends at the 18th verse. So that tells the difference whether you have reading from a Tanakh, or what some people might say a Hebrew scripture, as opposed to a King James scriptures, where they say they started a new chapter, where it's really considered one and the same chapter. So that's just for those, and I point that out because sometimes, from time to time, even in certain parts of when we get to Deuteronomy and other parts of the book, a person might be teaching out of a Tanakh version or Masoretic text or Hebrew scriptures, and the verses sometimes may not coincide with the regular King James version. So when you might be looking for where we're coming from, what they say, well, why it's not in that chapter? I didn't see it in that chapter. And you might have to go a little bit further on. So we had what you call, and just to give a little rendition, we had what we call sidros and pashios. That's how we had the book divided. Later on, I think one of them monks and stuff like that, Christian guy named Stevens, he started writing chapters and verses for scriptures to make it easy for people to find different parts of the book when they wanted to discuss it. We already just had sidros and patriots, and that's how it was divided for us. So when I say the sidra of Zal, you already know it goes from one point to another point, but we find that a good thing he had made it convenient for all. So it's not whether he's in our faith or not. If he develops something good, then we tend to adopt it for a convenience as well as recognizing that it's good. Because you say you're Israelite or Hebrew, I mean, we're the only one that's the great thinkers of the world. And just that his version of where it should end at don't coincide with what we understand how it should end, and he's making it convenient for him. So that's how he broke it down. And so from the Hebrew text, then we might use verses and chapters in some of the books, especially when we have an English translation or right in the Hebrew translation on the scroll that we have in the synagogue. It's only going to be in sections like that. So and so when that's just a little bit of information for those that might be wondering from time to time why they can't find certain things. All right, so now the book of Leviticus, which last time I was speaking on, was called Vayikra, and Vayikra is actually a verb in a sense, and he called. So, and he called to Moshe, and that was a strange opening for a particular portion of scriptures. Now we have another strange opening following right behind that, which is the word Zal. Zal itself, some people say it's Zal, which it means a command. And you said, well, what makes this more different, being it has the same root as mitzvah, or they'll say mitzvah, which is a commandment. All right, so why this? And it's written and it's stated in the imperative. So in other words, that it's not an option. See, we have some mitzvahs where you say, okay, this is the law. You may follow it or you may not follow it. But now as we get to this particular section of the scriptures, because Leviticus opened up with sacrifices. So now at this particular portion and junction in scriptures, it's about we're talking about offerings to the Creator, and we talk about instituting a priesthood, instituting a sanctuary, a place of worship, and it got to be done exactly how the Creator want. And the person that's going to do the job, he's commanded to do the job the way the Creator wanted and not the way he think it should be done. And that's what often a lot of us would think we could serve God any way we want. Well, the Creator has a prescribed way that he wants to be served. And if these people that say, if you're in a position as a Kohen, a priest, then it's only one way you're supposed to be able to function and do things. And like I said earlier, we are the only people of antiquity that knew everything that the priest is supposed to do without being a priest. Because if that was not, the condition, then how could I be my brother's keeper? How could I even assist him? So that means we study about the sacrifice, even if I can't do the sacrifices, because I want to make sure that the one that's doing the sacrifices is equipped and understand his job as well. So it's no secret, and I don't have to think that he's doing some mystic thing and it's all designated under his power alone. But he himself is trying to represent me. And if he's going to represent me, he got to represent me from what I know about myself and carry that and transmit that to the Creator. So now I'm just going to also, when we look at this particular portion, like I said, you have what they call, the different sacrifices that's going on. But it talks about the Kohen and the priest, find out they are being prepared for their task. They also know how to prepare each offering. All right, so they commanded to prepare each offering a specific way. They also hear about their job perks, what their job is, the tasks of their jobs. They get all that and involved. So they know what is their wages for doing this particular job, how they get paid. Then you have what they call in the inauguration also of the Mishkan, the tabernacle. So not only the priest has an induction, but also we have the tabernacles that we built. It has to go through a process of induction. So we know in inauguration, which is the word Meluim, which is an inauguration in Hebrew. And, spelled from the root, Mem, Lamed, Aleph, which means to be full. So normally when you have a Meluim, that's actually an inauguration. And when a person gets inaugurated and from one level, that means he ascended from one level to another level. So this is why, this process is being done in this particular portion right here. So that as far as building the Mishkan, we follow the prescribed manner, but its induction is not just for us just to say, I put this board together, I put this curtain together, I had these right items and vessels here. The induction is how do I, and you had to go, how do I actually anoint it? How do I actually say it actually graduated? And the graduation process, as we see later on, is done only with the Creator's approval. That say they had this plain, simple sticks of boards and lumbles and curtains and wool and skin and utensils and metal, as far as brass, gold, and silver, is elevated on another level than the coins you might have in your pocket. So those are some things I'd bring out. So I'm just going to read a couple of things in the early part of the verse of the chapter as normally, and then I'm just skim through it and try not to weigh you too long. But in the beginning, it says, the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, command Aaron and his sons, saying, this is the law of the burnt offering. It is that which goeth up on the fire, on his firewood upon the altar all night until the morning. And the fire of the altar shall be kept burning thereby. And the priest shall put on his linen garments and his linen breeches, and he shall put upon his flesh, and he shall take up the ashes there whereto the fire hath consumed the burnt offering on the altar, and he shall put them beside the altar, and he shall put off his garments and put on other garments and carry forth the ashes without the camp unto a clean place. And the fire upon the altar shall be kept burning thereby. It shall not go out, and the priest shall kindle wood on it every morning, and he shall lay the burnt offering in order upon it, and shall make smoke thereon, the fat of the peace offering. Fire shall be kept burning upon the altar continually. It shall not go out. So now, most people, and it shows we already read about some of the garments that the priests have to wear, right? And when he's going to be inducted within the garments and stuff more so. But what we find though, from the priest garments as part of his induction or inauguration, is that though the priest be dressed in this elaborate garment, and everybody don't mind, or anybody, I should say, anybody don't mind doing a laudable, important, great job in front of everybody. So that's prestigious. I got the opportunity to actually go up to the altar of the Creator and offer up on behalf of the people, and this is my job. Wow, that's great. I did that. But now, as great as you are, will you do the menial task? And say, get somebody else to get the ashes and clean it up. The Kohen himself had to clean up what he burnt up. So he couldn't say, I'm going to designate somebody else to clean it up for me. I offer it up, I burnt it up, and I must clean it up. And I got to change into a humble garment to clean it up. So, and it's strange that you got to take the garments that's pretty much could get soiled a lot worse to carry out the ashes. So that means that it teaches you a spiritual lesson as well. As great as you are, you still got to be able to be humble, in your job. You don't let your job make you, excel yourself in your ego. So that means that this is a lesson for all leaders, is that though you may be leading the people, you might be in a position of leadership, a position of authority, your authority is even greatly enhanced by the manner of how you are humble in that area, and you have a concern about cleaning up the mess you ever made in front of the people. So this is what the priest do. He burnt it up, he offer up, that's his job, but he also clean up the mess. So let's go a little bit further. We talk about 4 types of offerings here. In the 22nd verse of the 7th chapter, it talks about, fat and blood forbidden as food. And it starts off like this. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, you shall eat no fat of ox or sheep or goat, and the fat that which is died of itself, and fat of that which is service, but ye shall not in no wise eat of it. For whosoever eateth the fat of the beast, or which men present an offering made by fire unto the Lord, even as so that eateth it shall be cut off from his people. And ye shall eat no manner of blood, whether it be a fowl or a beast, in any of your dwellings. whosoever it be that eateth any manner of any blood, that soul shall be cut off from his people. So now, this is really when we get right here, is our first dietary law of prohibition. Now we know when you get into the next sidra, you get a dietary law, a full dietary law in the next sidra. The next portion of Leviticus 11th chapter, when we get to that. But right now, as a people, this is our first dietary law that we're giving. Where to say, well, okay, they don't even say clean and unclean in that sense. So, and I had a discussion, Misha and different people. And when we go before, prior to Genesis, the only dietary law after the leaving of the ark was don't eat blood. That's the only thing. Don't eat blood. Now it says don't eat blood and fat. So the dietary law became more intense, but it's not stopped. It's not done yet. And when people say fat, they say, well, it tells you and describes from the sacrifices what fat it is. In the Hebrew, it's very clear what it's called, halev, as opposed to shemen, which is like an oil fat that sort of melts like. And it tell you where the fat comes from on the animal from the sacrifices that's supposed to be burnt up. And on the fat from the sacrifices, you can't make use of it. But if you had your own animal and you slaughtered the animal for your own personal consumption, you're not allowed to eat that fat, but you could use the fat for other purposes, for candle wax and stuff like that, which most people use animal fat and different things for candle wax or other little items, maybe to help machinery move about, move heavy objects over something. All right, so it's various things they might use the fat for. But, for pulleys and, in the work, but they're never allowed to eat the fat. Blood, on the other hand, they're supposed to pour it to the ground and not eat it and take that at all, and take it at all. So those, some of the things I just point out here. And then it goes in to the portion of what belongs to the priest of the sacrifice and shows about how he got paid. And now it talks about in the 8th chapter as it begins to end, and it talks about the consecration of Aaron and his sons. All right, and it tells you about they're fully enclosed and dressed, and they go through a 7-day process. So not only and Moses doing this consecration, so while they're going through the 7-day process, what we learn from is that they had to stay in the tabernacle precinct for 7 days. Now I hear all these different things. Did they actually stay inside the tabernacle itself, or they stay in the area they had? What happens when they had to have bodily movements and stuff like that? All right, so that area you could discuss more with your teachers. I have my answers and views on it. That's pretty much traditional in that sense. But you might want to discuss that a 7-day process, and you learn in this job, and this job is a sensitive job as for a Kohen, and it's not only a job. Some people, you don't do your job well, you get a promotion, you get demoted, or you get fired or suspended. But a Kohen, his job is so sensitive that he could lose his life, which you're going to find later on in the next portion. Also, as we look into the 7-day process, they use the number 7 there as a completion. So 7 days he actually going through the process. He's not, or they're not a priest until that process is completed within that 7 days. The tabernacle itself went through a 7-day process. So it's not become a solid sanctuary until the dedication process was done, on that particular 8th day. So you can say, okay, some people figure, hey, I'm already in the priest class, I'm a priest. No, you're a priest when you graduated from the priest class at that time. Now you're born a priest or you're not a priest, but it's a thing of bloodline. So that's all I want to bring in that area there. I'm trying to be a little bit brief and cover quite a bit. But also now, I mentioned about Shabbat Haggadah, and the term. Before I go to that, I'll just read the regular Torah. I might save that for the end. Shabbat Haggadah happened to coincide the same day that the Siddur Zohar come about. And when you look at Shabbat Haggadah, you say, well, where did it come from? What makes this the great Shabbat? And there's nowhere in the scriptures that they call anything Shabbat Haggadah, the great Shabbat. But traditionally, the name, traditionally it's the Shabbat that comes directly before the feast of Pesach, Chag HaMatzah as well. Some people don't call Pesach a Chag, but it's actually listed in the book as a Chag, a feast. But the Shabbat that comes before that, or sometime it might come on, Chag HaMatzah. But the Shabbat that comes before, directly before Passover, is called the Great Shabbat. Now it gets its term from the last book of the prophets and book of Malachi. Most people pronounce it Malachi, but Malachi, which means my messenger. So it comes from the last book, which I'm gonna touch on just briefly in the book of Malachi. And I don't want to. Before I go into Malachi, I like to bring out one portion. I meant to bring out one portion in this. Before I go to Malachi, in the book of Leviticus, the 7th chapter, they talk about 4 different types of sacrifices. That's enumerated in this particular portion of Zohar, and only one of the sacrifices have a unique phrase going on with it, and that's the thanks offering, the torah offering, as it says in the Hebrew, the thanks offering, and use the term result torah. Let me see, 7-11. Oh no, yeah. Result torah zevah hashlishi. Oh no, I ain't doing that. That's it. I got it. Yeah. Okay. 7-11. I gotta make sure I get 7-11 for you. Okay, yeah, 7-11. All right. So result torah zevah hashlimin asher yakri la Adonai. So that's result torah, right? And this is the instruction of the sacrifice, about sacrifice. Well, they say complete offering, peace offerings, refer to asher yikriv la Adonai. So, but when they describe that, it's coming behind the thanks offering, and it's saying like it's the only one that's used in the future tense, that he will offer in the future tense. All the other offerings, they don't say in the future tense this will be offered. Only the Torah offering, the thanks offering, that it would be offered in the future. So a lot of people that's animal lovers and animal activists and stuff of that nature, will frown mostly on the slaughtering of animals and stuff like that, and look at it as archaic. But we so far removed, we might not, today, that we find it kind of cruel, especially when those, say they're vegans and vegetarians, as opposed to those that eat eat flesh. That's another story. But even a vegan at one time gonna have something other than vegan, and you know, and though they say I'd never take nothing with a face on it, they never have anything with a face on it. Even a vegan themselves would deal with breast milk at the very basis. You know, suckling on their mother's milk, which those that might have to look it up, you know, is like decomposed blood, technically, a product of that. So where it becomes permissible. So that's just, I just threw that out there, just, you know, let people know that eating flesh don't make you a worse individual or a better individual. We just have a diet that we're supposed to adhere to for ritualistic purification as we're going to go into the next sidra. All right, so anyway, I was speaking about the Shabbat Haggadah. So I'm going to go into the book of Malachi just a little bit. And let's see, flip over there. Book of Malachi, just a notch. And he's the last prophet of scriptures. And in the book of Malachi, let me see, first, should be 20. Let me see, Malachi. All right, starting around the 5th verse of wait a minute. Just one moment here. All right, the 3rd chapter, the 19th verse, it says, "For behold, the day cometh, and it burns in the furnace, and all the proud, and all that work wickedness shall be stubble." Let me change these glasses. "And the day that cometh shall set them ablaze, said the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch." Then it goes on and talks about the great day. And we're going to flip over here in the 23rd verse, which would be the 4th chapter of, I don't have the other King James version in front of me, but the 4th chapter near the end of, let me see, 2 chapters from the end of Malachi. So I guess that would be verse 5 and 6 in the King James version. All right. It says, "Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord." So the word great, gadol, you know what I mean? You know, menorah, you know, so it talks about, you know, great and terrible, or awesome, day of Adonai. So that's where they take it from, that particular time in the end times. And why? Because it's normally associated with Passover, and you talk about redemption. So I'm going to speak a little bit on Passover before I go into part of Jeremiah and then read the Psalm, which is pretty lengthy. That when we look at the Passover that we just went through, most of us, I hope everybody had an enjoyable CHOKMAH, festive season. And one of the things is that holy day, that season, is something that everybody on the planet can identify with. Because the Passover story, when we talk about the Passover story, even though we focus on the Israelite story, we focus on our redemption and liberation from the land of Egypt, how we were slaves in Egypt, and how the Creator rescued us out of the land of Egypt. We focus on that. And we tell the story from an Israelite point of view, and from our ancestors' experience. And it's a story that is not foreign, the institution of slavery, the institution of yearning for freedom is not only exclusive for the people of the children of Israel. So it's always that, that story that we talk about, but what we have here is a marvel of a revolution, that the first time any slave was taken out of the midst of another nation without them fighting for their own liberation, and had a supreme being to do this here. So this is what it states, that, we are put here to be, for the glory of the Creator. We're here to serve the Creator, not to serve man or one another in that sense. So, be subservient to another man, I should say it in that way. So the slavery experience, the oppression experience, those that have been downtrodden, everybody can identify with that, because there's no person on the planet and no society that can't say, I was subjected to somebody. And being subject to some people, especially when they become oppressive, and especially when you don't want to be subject in that position, you have a feeling of weakness, a feeling of insecurity. Your time is never your time. All you do is work for the glory and gratification of someone else. So everybody could identify with that. And you notice that's one, even though we talk about the Passover story, and we got prerequisites about who can, as far as males, how you got to be circumcised to, observe and eat the Passover. We're the first to invite people on the, in our ritual to a meal to celebrate our liberation. That's marvel in itself. Most people celebrate the liberation for themselves and only celebrate it with those that has things in common. But you're inviting other people to recognize that if the Creator can liberate you and celebrate, and rescue you, that you invited somebody else to say, well, you recognize that there's a God and that man should be free to serve God. You can't serve God as a slave. You got to serve the Creator as an individual that's not obligated to no other individual. You can't have two masters, as they say. So that's one of the marvelous things. Now, we know we're not supposed to eat unleavened bread, anything. We're supposed to eat unleavened bread. Sorry, excuse me. We're supposed to eat unleavened bread. Nothing with leavening, nothing with referred to as comments or in scriptures. So I just want to bring this out, that because we have a lot of questions about what is leavening, what is not leaven. When you see this, the season already is over with by the time you see this. So just for informational purposes, I'm sharing this, that when they talk about the leavening, they talk about the 5 grains that was in the land. The 5 grains in the land that could possibly become leaven was barley, wheat, rye, oats, spells. Those 5 grains was the things that you had to be careful about becoming leavening. Now you hear people that talk about souring, such as, wine. If wine itself was leavening, and I like to bring this out because I know people that talks about it, and I'm just bringing it up for informational purposes, and I'm glad that it would be seen only after, so it don't seem like I'm attacking anybody or trying to throw a problem within what they do, whatever you do. But I'm trying to share information as best as I can. Is that if wine itself, fermented drinks, first of all, wine is basically from a fruit, not from a grain. That's number one. It's from a fruit. Grape is from a fruit. I just mentioned 5 grains. I didn't mention not one fruit. I mentioned 5 grains. And also, that when we talk about, water and stuff that, rise, it's not about it rising. It's about the sourness, the content. It's the dope that becomes, something other than what it should be at that time for this particular purpose. Now, if the Kohen had to have a drink offering accompany every offering, even during that season, then if leavening is not supposed to go on the altar, why would he dash the wine, the drink offering, the libation around the altar where you're not supposed to have leavening or honey on? So just that simple deduction alone, so, help some people, discuss it further amongst your teachers and stuff. There are those that have different customs, mechagim, So, you got, different mechagims, then discuss it. And, some people don't eat corn, they don't eat rice. So when we look at those areas like that, we got to say, well, what are the different areas that people are dealing with, and at that time. And so I just want to bring those particular things out in reference to that. And then when we start to count the Omer, some of us, have a difference of account. And, some will start, the first Shabbat after the whole season, of CHOKMAH, so the unleavened bread is over with. We go directly the second day. We start counting the Omer, which would be basically after the 15th of the month of Aviv on the Hebrew calendar. Then that would be the beginning of the 16th. That's when we start counting the time to Shavuot. So I just wanted to express those items there in passing, and and it's a lot of things to be considered too. That for 40 years, where would they have? What kind of grain they would have to make bread? When it said that we were to eat manna when the time they even crossed over into the Jordan, basically, 30 days after Moses, had passed. So they still ate manna. So where was the leavening? And then I know some people have this idea about the trade. We was able to trade with people. We had people attacking us like Amalek, for no apparent reason. We had people also that we wanted to pay to pass through their neighborhood, not just to, we're going to pay to pass through the neighborhood. They didn't want us to pass 40 years later. So it's a difference. A lot of the laws that we have, and we talk about and we read about, some of the things was only theoretical, but we didn't have all the material that we have. And as we going through, like, say, Sukkot, the end of the year, you think, you would say, well, we know there's a law that's given by the prophet Moshe, and by which we observe the Feast of Booths. But when should we observe it? Should we observe it while we already in the 40-year march? And that's how we live in anyway. So what houses are we moving out of if we're in the 40-year march? So these are some of the things that when we explore scriptures, we got to look at it a lot more, because you're talking about dwelling in booths, and that's all you got at the time. So it's a lot of things that I always tell people to go back over and discuss with the teachers about some of the festivals we observe. And then Passover itself being the most prominent festival, because that's the only festival out of the 3 appointed times, the Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, those appointed times that all males must appear before the Creator. That's the only one that has a do-over. Say, I'm unclean by the dead, or I'm too far away from the journey, from the land and where God's house is, where he caused his name to dwell. Then it's so important that we find out it's a turning point in our life. So when you're thankful about being redeemed, we're redeemed from one area of work to a more laudable area of work. That's about, we were reminded of that in Mount Torah at this, Mount Sinai, where it says, I'm the Lord thy God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. And it tells you should serve no other God. We are the servants of the Most High God. That's what it's supposed to be about. That's the only one. And the Creator won't work you to death, and he paid greatly. So I'm gonna move on and just read just a couple of verses from Jeremiah, the last part of Jeremiah, after Haftorah that would normally be, and which be 9th chapter of Jeremiah, which has a lot of wisdom in there. But but most people did that follow tradition did Malachi, as I said earlier. When we look at the last chapter of, 9th chapter of Jeremiah, 22nd verse in the book, it reads that, thus said the Lord, let not the wise man glory in his wisdom, neither let the mighty man glory in his might. Let not the rich man glory in his riches, but let him that gloried glory in this. So knowing a lot ain't gonna be sufficient. Solomon knew more than anybody could ever come about. All right. And then talk about, might. There's always somebody stronger. Your strength's gonna have a limit. And talk about riches, that God can give you riches that you can't contain. And when God gives you riches, you ain't got to worry about protecting it. But he said, let him that glory in this. In other words, he's gonna give you some bragging rights. And one of the bragging rights he gives you, as we say in colloquial terms, that he understands and knoweth me. To know the Creator that's glory, that's honor. To know who is a true and living God, that who makes everything move and and make you have your being and your well-being in life. That's what we say. You could hold your chest out and say, I know God. Most people say they know him, but they really don't. But this is where you can start getting your bragging rights. That I am the Lord who exercises mercy. Say, know some of my qualities. One of my qualities is mercy. And not only that, you get mercy when judgment comes, it's justice. Say, everybody want to be treated fairly and righteousness in the earth. For in these things I delight to the Lord. So we're supposed to also enjoy what God enjoyed. And God said, look here, if you're going to put a badge or an emblem on your chest, then have an emblem or badge on your chest, knowing who is the Creator. So we're going to go into the Psalm 107, and I'm going to be pretty brief in that. So we got the 107 that goes along with the citrus salt. And Psalm 107 begins the book of the fifth book of the Psalms. As I said before, the book of Psalms is divided in 5 portions. If you got time to begin.
Hallelujah. We're in the book of Psalms, Psalms 107. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Hodula Yehoah ki tov, ki le'olam chasdo. Oh, give thanks unto Yehoah, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever. So let the redeemed of Yehoah say, whom he have redeemed from the hand of the adversary, and gathered them out of the lands from the east and from the west, from the north and from the sea. They wandered in the wilderness in the desert way. They found no city of habitation. Hungry and thirsty their soul fainteth in them. Then they cried unto Yehoah in their trouble, and he delivered them out of their distresses. And he led them by a straight way, that they might go to a city of habitation.
Okay, dear, before we go further. All right. So now, what we're looking for and what we talk about is the latter days, the great redemption. All right. Now, it's reminiscent of a redemption from way back in Egypt, but Egypt is just one area. We're scattered through the four corners of the globe. So, so when we talk about redemption, it talks about, it covers all kinds of things. When we talk about the four types of sacrifices, it covers four different types of conditions that a person might be in. Especially when you talk about, a thanks offering more so. All right, that the offering that's supposed to be in the future. One, a person could be in prison. Now, in prison, that always means, you got bars there. God could put you in a prison where you don't have any bars. You know what they call that? A sick bed. You don't got no guards where you got to pay, no security. You say, well, we're gonna make sure you don't get away. None of that. You be laid in one spot, and then you recover from that spot, that condition. All right. A person that be traveling on sea, a person that be traveling on land, those because the sea, when you go out and sea, you don't know what's going to happen. In the desert, which we're going to talk about more so here, we went to a wasteland. We don't know what's going to happen in there. How you going to come back from that? So we got several things that could go on, or you could have actually been in real incarceration. So they use the word chaim, which is life, for the four different types of persons, that's referred to as an acronym. But I'm not going to elaborate much on that right now. I'm just going to go on from the 8th verse, since it's 43 verses in this.
Verse 8 reads, "Let them give thanks unto Yahuwah for his mercy and for his wonderful works to the children of men. For he hath satisfied the longing soul, and the hungry soul he hath filled with good. Such as sat in darkness and in the shadow of death, being bound in affliction and iron, because they rebel against the words of God and contend the counsel of the Most High."
Right there. You notice that before we go to the 12th verse, most people that follow Pesach Haggadah, when they have a Seder for the first night, it's some things, some of them start off with, we were slaves in Egypt. Some say we was idol worshipers. It was a combination of both. So, but it goes from one level to another level. We even in Haggadah, it said, "Our man sought to slay our father." So, Aramean, well, ain't Abraham an Aramean? Ain't Jacob an Aramean? Then who's the Aramean we're talking about? Jacob's father-in-law. He was on him and getting ready to do some bodily harm to him and take back his daughters, the children, and the livestock, except for the Creator appeared to him in a dream. And you figure, if somebody appeared to me in my dream, and they ain't the God I know about, and they ain't the God I worship, and if I have another God, it'll make more sense to me to say, let me see what my God doing right about now. How this guy get to me? And I'm praying to you. I'm offering up to you. See, so God can have a way where no matter what your belief system is, when the Creator comes to you and appear to you, whatever you was doing before, whatever religion you had, right then and there, it don't compare to this. Because you don't expect an answer from your God. You don't expect for him to talk to you. So one of the things we learn as we go through the Psalms, and me and Marisha was just pretty much, going through some studying, and she was sharing some things with me. And a lot of times, which I find very profound, is that when you pray, you actually begin to speak with God. And when you study, you actually start to listen to the Creator. And that's what we're trying to do now. Study some of our history, some of our place that we have in life, so that we can actually begin to hear what the Creator wants of us. We read it, but do we really hear it? Continue, 12 on.
Verse 12 reads, Therefore he humbled their heart with travail. They stumbled, and there was none to help. They
Keep
cried
going.
unto Jehovah in their trouble, and he saved them out of their distresses. He brought them out of darkness and the shadow of death, and broke their bands in sunder. Let them give thanks unto Jehovah for his mercy, and for his wonderful works to the children of men. For he hath broken the gates of brass, and cut the bars of iron in sunder.
All right, that's free enough.
Crazed because of the way of their transgression, and afflicted because of their iniquities.
All right, first of all, you could do so much wrong that you're crazy and think you're sane. A crazy person don't know they're crazy. An insane person don't know they're insane. To them, everything makes sense because they create this environment for themselves. So, but what makes a person get into that condition? Transgression. Going against the all highest. And a lot of times we don't see ourselves going against the all highest as that. And we'll try to reason everything out except that we're doing something wrong. All right, we're not listening. Read a little bit further.
Verse 18, it reads,
Yes.
Their soul abhorred all manner of food, and they drew near unto the gates of death. They cried unto Jehovah in their trouble, and he saved them out of their distresses. He sent this word and healed them, and delivered them from their graves. Let them give thanks unto Jehovah for his mercy, and for his wonderful works to the children of men. And let them offer the sacrifices of thanksgiving, and declare his works with singing.
That's something right there. Now, I'd like to just bring up before we go to the next portion of that. It's always asked, different people when they deal with the Passover story, when the people left out of Egypt. Now we know we're going to celebrate and offer up, and worship the Creator. But we're going to a desert. So what would you bring along going to a desert? If you're going to make a trip like that, what would you bring along? So I'm sure they said they brought their dope. So I'm sure they must have had some water on the way, but I don't know. The water must have only lasted for about 7 days before they had an issue. The dough lasted for about 30 days before they had to get some manna. So who would bring a tambourine to offer up before the Creator? So Miriam herself and the women, they came with tambourines. Would you pack that? That's something I won't be thinking about. So the women was on basically a higher level of saying it's not just enough to offer up to God. And Moses came with a song at the sea. But the women said it's not just enough to have a song. We got to dance and play instruments and jubilance before this Creator for what he done. Because it said, then Moses sang this song that they read twice a year, out of the book of Exodus. And they read that song every morning, every prayer, 7 days a week. And those are part of traditional prayer reading. And yet it was not enough just to sing, but also to bring, your vocal cords is one thing, but put action to talk. We used to say, talk is so cheap, people do it in their sleep. Action's deep. She came and took it on another level with the tambourines. Something that I wouldn't think about personally myself. Am I going to a sacrifice and going out there on a journey? I'm thinking about survival mode. Bread and water. That's what I'm thinking about. Bread and water. And so this let you know that God shows a certain type of mercy for us in our very lowest state. And it gives you a thing about to let them offer sacrifice of thanksgiving and declare the works with singing. All right. So they were singing, but singing along just vocally, you got to be into your song. Some people just sing, let me see. Let me just come with something that most people might have this down there. Amen. So they're going D. So be it. You ain't happy about the so be it. But then some people say, yeah, let everybody say amen. Let everybody. So so they bring a little pep to it, and then some people might have little instruments to it. So this was about the singing that really is the joyfulness of it. All right, and shouting aloud. Let's go 23. And let's try to get through this here.
Verse 23 reads, "They that go down to the sea in ships, that do business in great waters, these saw the works of Jehovah and his wonders in the deep. For he commanded and raised the stormy wind, which lifted up the waves thereof. They mounted up to the heaven, they went down to the deeps. Their soul melted away because of trouble. They reeled to and fro and staggered like a drunken man, and all their wisdom was swallowed up."
Hold right there. Mm-hmm. Before we get to the cry. That reminds you of something like in the book of Jonah. God said, look here, we've been traveling the seas all the time. How come all the boats over there is riding calm and we the one being tossed around? How come we can't even get to shore? Everybody else moving around, no problem. And nobody coming to rescue us. All right? And they cried, and you know what the thing about the cry out? They cried out, told Jonah to cry out to his God. Then after they tossed Jonah over, they plead to be innocent of anything that could have happened to Jonah. And when the waters calm, they converted and praised the God of Jonah when Jonah was running from God. So it said, so even in the most darkest hours, so this is showing that it ain't just Israelites that can recognize the glory of God. At sea, everybody realized there's water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. They realized stuff like that. Let's go and continue. 20. All right. You can pick up 28.
Verse 28.
They cried unto the Lord in trouble.
They cried unto Jehovah in their trouble, and he brought them out of their distresses. He made the storm a calm, so that the waves thereof were still. Then were they glad, because they were quiet, and he led them unto their desired haven. Let them give thanks unto Jehovah for his mercy, and for his wonderful works to the children of men. Let them exalt him also in the assembly of the people, and praise him in the seat of the elders. He turneth rivers into a wilderness, and water springs into a thirsty ground, a fruitful land into a salt waste for the wickedness of them that dwell therein. He turneth a wilderness into a pool of water, and a dry land into water springs. And there he maketh the hungry to dwell, and they establish a city of habitation. And sow fields and plant vineyards which yield fruits of increase. He blessed them also, so that they are multiplied greatly, and suffereth not their cattle to decrease.
All right there. All right. First of all, one of the things about the redemption from Egypt, the Creator laid siege to Egypt. When you lay siege to a people, you normally cut their water supply off, and you start messing with their food chain. So, and the thing is, nobody else could come in to rescue them. So no information going out beyond you, and no information coming into them unless you allow it to come in. That's the siege of the Exodus, so to speak. All right. In the wilderness, when we was in the wilderness, it's a dry land, and it describes it, a land of scorpions, and fiery serpents, snakes. A dry land, a parched land, and yet we survive in a spot like that. It said where no man passed, because they take the end. They take a better course to go where they need to travel. They don't travel that route. Why they don't travel that route? Because a desert is like a sea. It's hard to chart your way across. You can walk around like a maze in the desert, and the thing is that you ain't gonna take a chance. You're gonna take, if you had to take the scenic route, you're gonna take the scenic route to get back, to where you need to go. The road that's most traveled, and not the road that's less traveled. So the Creator did a lot of wonders for us, because we had palm trees, we had oases, we had wells, and he fed us every day. So the thing is that he made it where it's impossible to live and survive for 40 years. He made that happen for us. All right, let's keep on.
Verse 39, it reads, again they are diminished and dwindle away through oppression of evil and sorrow. He poureth contempt upon the princes, and causeth them to wander in the waste where there is no way. Yet setteth he the needy on high from affliction, and maketh his families like a flock. The upright see it, and are glad, and all iniquity stoppeth her mouth. Whoso is wise, let him observe these things, and let them consider the mercies of Yahuwah. Hallelujah.
Right. Whoso is wise. Why is that? Because Moses had to tell him, don't you know what y'all went through and how you live? They created, it was 11 days journey from Egypt. We wound up doing a 40-year track. And the thing was that you got 4 expressions of redemption. We talk about, Elijah and stuff like that. They have a couple of Elijah, but I won't go into that now. But, and that started around the 16th century. Middle Ages, somewhere along there, a couple of Elijah. But 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 the thing is that you had it took us 40 years, and what was the Creator's waiting on? For all them generation, that old head, to die off, and let the people that never known Egypt to develop and become adults, other than the females and other than the Levites. And you know what's strange? The men died out, but their cattle still survived and they multiplied. So the cattle still multiplying, and the people itself, and when we check the census, we had a little bit of a shortage compared to the first census that was taken. And one of the interesting things is that it took up people that never knew slavery to be able to yearn for freedom. And that's what it's about. A lot of times when I tell my children how it was rough for us, how we didn't have this or we didn't have that, they said, for real? I look at them strange, like, for real? and how how the neighborhood was, and you go to people's house and say, no need to go to the next person's house because they're gonna have the same menu you got in your house, pretty much. It won't be a different menu too much. So I'm saying that the Creator treat us better than we actually deserve all the time. And all he asks for us is give him the thanks. And thanks is praise. With that, we got something out of what I said. I know it's a little long. I try to speed through it as much as I can. And any mistakes by my own, I say Shalom Aleichem and early Shabbat Shalom.
Hallelujah. Torah about Nasik. May the Most High God bless you. And may the Most High God bless everyone out there listening. And Shabbat Shalom to everyone out there. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.